Hey, Evangelize members, Josh with you again, and I'm so delighted to present to you this expert interview with a friend named Kyle Neilson. Kyle works for the Evangelion Consulting group, which is a group that really looks at the idea of organizational health and how building parishes and Catholic organizations that are organizationally healthy can have this huge impact in terms of our apostolic effectiveness. I really just love to talk about this topic, and Kyle's going to be he's a great resource for us in this area. So I think you're going to enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Well, you Evangelize members, so great to be with you again for another expert interview. I'm delighted today to welcome a good friend and a guest who's doing a lot of great work in the church. His name's Kyle Neilson. He's working well, I'll actually let him tell you what he's doing, but he really is just taking on a really crucial role to help parishes become healthy and be amazing. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Great, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Kyle, before you tell us about your work, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found yourself personally kind of coming to engage in work like this? Like, what's your backstory? How did you come to find yourself working in the church?
Right. Well, my wife and I entered the Catholic Church in 2002, and we were evangelicals. And I went to grad school and then started working in diocesan and parish ministry, faith formation, primarily with adults, and thought I would do that forever. It seemed like the natural thing the Lord led me to do. And then about 3 years ago, I had a growing awareness and conviction that often the issues that were slowing us down, hindering us, causing pain, frankly, were related to leadership issues. I didn't know what I could do about that, but I just became aware. And then our founder, Keith Borchers, who's a close friend of Patrick Lencioni, whose method we use, reached out to me and asked me to get involved. And I thought, wow, this perhaps is the answer to my prayer that I may not even have consciously said, but my heart certainly did. So it was just a natural thing. And then as soon as I discovered the work he was doing and the potential impact and the need, it was like, this is clearly what I'm supposed to do. And then I also quickly discovered an aptitude and a love for it.
Wonderful. Now tell us about Evangelion Consulting. Tell us about this work, maybe starting with Pat Lencioni's work, and then how you saw this, or I guess you and the people working there saw this application for the parish structure. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, for those who may not know, so Patrick Lencioni, he's one of the co-founders of the Amazing Parish movement. Some watching may know, many maybe, and he comes out of the business world prior to that, in that he has a consulting firm in San Francisco area. He's written about 12 books, most of which are bestsellers. And he's a big deal in the kind of business, leadership, teamwork world. His book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, has been on the New York Times list for like 540 straight weeks or something.
Wow.
He, about 10 years ago, went through a deep conversion. And I heard him give his testimony at a Catholic University conference in Nashville to like 3,000 men. It was amazing. And he became friends with our founder, Keith, who was working for the Diocese of Oakland in faith formation. And Keith sought to be trained by Pat to use Pat's stuff to help the church because he too saw that there was a real fit. And the reason for that, Josh, is because the work that we do deals with what we call organizational health, which is essentially whatever organization it is, a parish, a school, a diocese, and also at the same time a business. If there's human dysfunction, if there's confusion, that affects everyone and everything. So as you said in our prayer offline, grace builds on nature. And so we find ourselves working in the nature, if you will, the natural foundations and context and relationships that are the kind of stuff in which evangelization must or can or cannot flourish. So all of Pat's stuff is based on, I think, a Catholic worldview. It's based on virtue and wisdom, even though his books are written in secular language. So that's why it works, and that's why it can help.
Wow, that's awesome. And what are some of the, okay, so talking organizational health, what are some of the common challenges that you, in your work with parishes, have encountered? What are some of those things that we might not even realize, hey, this isn't working properly, and we really should fix this because it impacts our end game and our mission? What are some of the things you find yourself encountering when working with pastors?
I think probably the most common and the most important thing is leaders who are isolated from other leaders. And that can apply in a number of ways. Let's start with the pastor. So a good pastor who wants to evangelize and who has the desire to seek excellence, hopefully that's the vast majority, he has good people that are helping him, whether they're staff or volunteers or maybe some other clergy as well. Just because you have people working with you doesn't mean you're a team with those people. And we often find what we call, by analogy, a golf team structure, where individual leaders with great intentions and zeal do their work and do it diligently. But they do it in isolation from their colleagues and maybe from their leaders. So it's like a golf team. They go out and play their individual match, again, with diligence, well-intended, and come back and submit their scores. And the score of the team is the result of all those individual matches. But there's no teamwork therein. And my conviction is that's one of the first problems, because the human person is designed for collaboration, right? This is the church's language. It's also the cry of the human heart. We want to do life with others. It's the most natural and effective and also, I would say, beautiful way for us to live and to work. And often in the church, we have a lot of lone rangers who I don't think, want to be that. So we help the pastor form a team, a small team, and help it become cohesive, like a hockey team or a basketball team versus the golf team. And hockey or basketball, as you know, you're on the court or the ice and you're working like a unit. And you do whatever it takes, creatively, sacrificially, hopefully selflessly, to win as a team. So if I'm a basketball point guard and I score 30 points, but my team loses, it doesn't matter that I scored 30 points.
Right.
So that's what we do. We help the priest discover the beauty and the potency of having a basketball team. And I see profound things, Josh. Like, I'll tell you a little quick story. A priest who initially was resistant to working with us because we sort of invite, change and discomfort, because you're going to have to confront some things in this shift, in yourself and in your people and in your operation. That's hard for all of us. So he initially was like, well, I don't know, but then eventually had a change of mind and decided to work with us. And we've been working together for about 15 months. The first thing I did is help him form a team of all volunteers plus the parish secretary of about 5-6 people.
Okay.
And volunteers giving maybe 4 hours a week. And I've seen a profound change in this man and slowly in the parish. In the man. Who is this guy? He's relatively young, kind of, not brand new ordained, but not an older fellow. So he's got lots of energy, lots of zeal. He was getting overwhelmed by the demands of parish life. He's alone in the parish in terms of clergy. And he's got a declining population that has funerals, that also has a lot of people who are kind of entrenched in their turf in the parish and resistance to new initiatives and new direction, and kind of passive aggressive or sometimes aggressive.
Wow, that sounds so unfamiliar.
And he's a kind, caring guy. He doesn't really like to correct things. It's never comfortable for any of us, but for some of us it's more uncomfortable. Right. So that was kind of the profile. Meanwhile, the parish was not growing and was not able to get out of itself because of his time. Really, that was the heart of it. His inability, because of the demands, to make new things happen and fix things that were broken. With this team, fast forward, all of that is different now, because they're now taking a more courageous look at all the challenges. They're lovingly correcting people and enduring the pain and sacrifice involved in that, and they're starting new things because it's not all on him anymore. So you're the Alpha Canada guy. They're going to be launching Alpha, and never could have dreamed of that in a sustainable way. Yeah, he didn't pay me to say that, by the way. And the thing is, he doesn't have to run it himself directly, which in 1.0 parish version, he would have thought, I have to do this amidst all the burdens. So it's the power of delegation. It's the power of working with a small team. And it's also the joy of it, because he feels supported. He's going into those difficult conversations knowing that the team is behind him and has actually helped prep him for it. It's beautiful. Wow. He said he sleeps better at night.
Wow, that's amazing. Eh? What a testament to the change that can happen in a short period of time. It really doesn't seem to me, as you mentioned, my Alpha work, I do get to work with different Christian traditions and learn from them as well. And it's one of the things that's really stood out to me is that there is often more of a teamwork focus in some Protestant churches I've come to encounter that it's hard to picture in the average Catholic parish. I do know of exceptions to the rule, of course. I know Father James Mounds Parish is a team of well over 10, probably over a dozen, and they've begun to sort of embrace this sort of approach. But it doesn't seem to be one of those naturally embedded things that priests are receiving through seminary, this idea of how to go out and form a team. And I guess another thing that kind of comes to mind is if you don't have that sort of sense of that we actually need a team, then there's going to be this great limiting factor on the way you do mission work in your parish, because it all depends on one person and their capacity, and one person can only do so much. Am I right?
Yes. You're touching on the key issue, I think, Josh, that you're right. Seminary, as robust and wonderful and thorough as it is, I don't think I've taught at seminary and I work with our seminarians. I can tell you a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. From my knowledge, it's not an integral part of at least the existing elements of formation. Mm-hmm. It's implicit in the human formation, spiritual, theological, but yeah, it's not like you come out of seminary knowing how to lead a team, like you say. It's not part of the skills that are taught. Mm-hmm. And so that, therefore, is the foundation. Hopefully, I think this is probably what the church assumes, is that in early placements as a priest, you're going to get that experience with more senior pastors, but they know what they know and they do what they do. Mm-hmm. And in my observation, my limited awareness of Catholic parishes out there, I think it's probably right by extrapolation, is it's the rare place that's doing this. Mm-hmm. Because it's just not part of the culture, like you say. So you're right, and it's a big deal. And I often think of my work as being a bit like the Israelites who went up to the Promised Land to spy it out and found that it was full of amazing, huge grapes and milk and honey, and they came back and said, this is what it's like. And some of the Israelites, their brothers and sisters, didn't believe them. They didn't think it was real. Plus, they were afraid of the enemy there. And that's what I often feel like, is I'm describing this new way of living. It's not just doing your work, it actually affects your whole life. And they're not sure it's real because they've never seen it. They've never seen it. And a little thing about our seminarians here I'll tell you about in Vancouver, it's really beautiful. They are now, through some wonderful influences within and without the seminary, working together in their seminary and actually approaching seminary life as a team and mentoring younger seminarians in a team context. And it's beautiful. Wow. The future's bright to my little corner of the world.
Wow, that's wonderful. Another thing that came to mind when you're talking about Pat Lencioni's work in the business world is businesses, when they bring somebody in, there's usually a sense of urgency already. There's a sense that if we don't do something, then we're going to lose market share, or we're going to be at risk in some way. We're going to be exposed, and we need to fix this because of the goal. And hopefully they know what the goal is, right? One of the things I worry about at times with our parishes is whether we have that same sort of goal-based mentality. And just if we were to take an analogy, I was just thinking about this before our call today, but if you ran like a good hamburger joint, and all of a sudden you started not selling as many hamburgers, you'd start to wonder what's going on. Maybe another really good hamburger joint opened up nearby, and customers were going there. Or maybe people started all of a sudden not thinking that hamburgers were useful to them anymore and changed their diet, sort of like that, But there would be sort of this, having some kind of metrics would make us say, there's probably something that we need to pay attention to and to work towards. And I wonder if, and by the way, I should say as a caveat, this isn't necessarily like to criticize pastors or pastoral leadership or anything like that. I'm just thinking in the big scale of parishes as organizations. If we're not measuring something, and if we're not really accountable to something in terms of numbers, then we won't see any need to try to fix things. You know what I mean? Like the bare minimum is still doing a lot of stuff. The bare minimum is still bringing grace into people's lives through the sacraments and providing a place for the people of God. But I guess if we put in sort of this missionary key that Pope Francis talks about and start to really look beyond that, then we can really become aware that we need to look at the health of our organization because of the importance of the goal, And I wonder if that's another piece of it, is if we're able to sort of communicate, young pastors, young lay people, everybody across the board, because it's all of our work, this sense that our mission doesn't end with the people that are already kind of coming around, whatever size of group that is, but our mission is beyond that. Our mission is to bring Jesus to people who know him and those who don't know him and those who've fallen away. Those who've never known him, then gosh, we have to look at how can we build the strongest team possible to do that.
Yes.
So
yes, I affirm all that, Josh. That makes perfect sense. And I think you're touching on a number of things. Which could be a very long conversation, but I'll just make a couple comments. Yeah. Essentially, you're touching on, in part, where accountability falls in the life of the church today. Realistically, we know the concept is a true concept, it's a Christian idea, but how is it actually done? And often a pastor doesn't have peer accountability realistically, and much accountability from his leadership on the mission. Mm-hmm. Attendance, finances, those things are often measured in diocesan life, but like how many people have come back to the church and are new to the church is not as much on the radar. And I think, again, I don't think there's any ill intent in this, but here, I'll just tell you something I'm working on. I've got a couple of places where it's close to going ahead. I think pastors can and should work together on teams and regions. I mean, the church foresees this in the deanery model, but often it's like a golf team, loosely structured without real meaningful collaboration and accountability. That can be done differently. And those guys, let's say it's 5 pastors who rethink now their mission as a part of a wider mission, and now they're part of a team of 5, so they're not alone in their parish. Even if they have a team they lead, you need peers with whom you're a team, right? And you need a father, if you will, a leader that you can go to regularly. Mm-hmm. And the bishop, it's hard if you've got 100 priests, 100 pastors. Just the accessibility can be really difficult there. So anyway, that mechanism can create a sense of accountability. Because I think the other thing, Josh, is I hope every priest wants to evangelize. That's why they're a priest. That's their heartbeat. But again, the prospect of doing more, being more bold and courageous and disrupting things and maybe correcting some things is just scary and overwhelming when you're managing the burdens of just keeping the lights on. And so I can't fault a priest for not doing more because I know how hard they work. Yeah. And they just perhaps haven't seen what the power of delegation can do. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I'm seeing. I'll tell you a quick story about me. Yeah. So I worked in a great context for 10 years. In diocesan life, wonderful people. 3 years ago, I began consulting, and I left 2 years ago to do this full time as my mission. And in January, I was in California doing a training with parish leadership teams with our team of consultants. There were about 10 of us, I think, or 12. And I was giving some of the main talks to this room full of 27 teams, about 250 people. And our team at lunch huddled up and gave feedback on the morning, the first morning of the 2 days. And I got feedback that my speaking was good, but needed to be tighter and shorter. That's great. Great to hear. I want to hear this. The afternoon commences, I gave a couple other talks. At dinner, I got more feedback. Kyle, tighter. And someone said, are you aware of very kindly, are you aware of the extent to which you need to tighten up your talks, Kyle? It was our president's wife. I was taken aback how candid this was and how direct. Yeah. But I wasn't upset. I went back to the rectory I was staying at with a colleague, practiced. He helped me practice. In the morning the next day, I was tighter. Why? Because I was on a team who had trust, which takes cultivation, and a commitment to excellence, who was willing to tell me the kind, uncomfortable truth, and then support me in getting better. That simple recipe is the most, if you will, human and obvious thing in the world, but many of us out there don't have it. And so the prospect and the realistic ability to do more without that, I think, is actually impossible. And I actually fear that some of our priests can get demoralized and discouraged because they think, I'm supposed to evangelize more, but I just can't. And that is a deep, deep tragedy because it is fixable.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think of the book you probably read. I forget the name of the author at the moment, but Essentialism. You know, the disciplined pursuit of less but better. Looking at the things that really only we can do, and then figuring out what are other things that we can delegate, and maybe even to people who have better strengths in those areas. But it's a great source of joy to be dialing down on the stuff that you can do really well and that gives you passion. And life, and it also advances the goal of this organization that's so important to the world that we work in, the church.
When you're alone, you have to be the chief cook and bottle washer. You have to do it all, and that's not how God made us. He made us different with different strengths, partly to draw us to doing life and work with other people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So maybe one practical thing I can give to our members, whether you're ordained or lay, is this idea of teamwork. How can we work in collaboration with one another in evangelization, either as if we are the leader, pairing up with other leaders and developing that sort of accountability, and also trust to hear and learn how we can improve in what we do. And whether you're lay people as well, we can look at these same things. And it's like that's the example Kyle just shared is a beautiful thing when we can be seen, but also be willing to encourage to grow is a great thing. Kyle, I know you do have to run. I really am super grateful for your time. How can people learn more about you and the work that you're doing, and maybe explore whether this would be a benefit in their parish context?
Sure, thanks, Josh. Well, you can check us out online. We're at evangelionconsulting.com, and there's a way to contact us there. You can read a little bit about what we do. We've written some articles on different topics that I call the intersection of leadership, evangelization, and organizational health, and human flourishing. That's a bit of a mouthful, but there's some kind of interesting stuff there that you might want to check out, and you can find us through that.
Wonderful. Well, do check it out. Do check it out, friends. I do think it would be a great resource to you. It is so important. And Kyle, just continue to do the work that you're doing, and may God bless it and bring you great joy through this important work you're doing and making our church run in its most healthy and excellent way possible.
Great. Thank you, Josh. And keep up your great work too. Appreciate it.
Hey, well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation between myself and Kyle Neilson of Evangelion Consulting. EvangelionConsulting.com is the website to check it out. And really, I mean, this was just kind of a start of a conversation. I think there's a lot that we can all learn in this area, and it would be worth checking out the website and maybe even exploring whether this might be something that could benefit your parish. It might be something you bring in if you're the pastor, or you might suggest to your pastor. But really, it is a team game that we're all called to, this work and the mission of the church. And if we can be healthier as a team, then good things are ahead. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the next expert interview.